aldermen were told last week that Mayor Carley would be having a month off work to recover from an illness. He was back at the helm last night after apparently being given a clean bill of health. In spite of the Mayor's return, the bickering between aldermen continued, and so too did the politicking. Independent John Kilpatrick stressed that he was not involved in a campaign to have the Mayor removed from office. Instead, he said there were moves within the Labor Party itself. Labor Alderman Jill Hall spoke on behalf of the party. At times she had to raise her voice above interjections from former Mayor Ivan Welsh, who was sitting in the gallery. This afternoon, the ALP released a statement saying it completely rejects the claim by Alderman Kilpatrick. It went on to say that Alderman Carley has been the subject of lies, innuendo and vicious rumours for months. The suggestion that these rumours emanated from within the ALP and that the ALP was pressing the Mayor to resign is unbelievable. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
It's a busy week for the 43-member concert band. Under the baton of Sergeant Dennis Williams, the audience at Newcastle City Hall was taken through a diverse program featuring songs from Phantom of the Opera to great classics like the overture from Mozart's Marriage of Figaro. Formed in 1895, the ensemble has become a popular attraction at special ceremonies and police functions, as well as public engagements, averaging around 300 performances a year.
Manufactured homes are adding another dimension to home buyers' choices. There are now 150 manufactured home villages in New South Wales, like this one in Newcastle. Their popularity in regional areas leading to an expo at Western Suburbs Leagues Club. Similar in style and presentation to traditionally built homes, the manufactured ones differ in that they're built in a factory, then transported in sections to the site for assembly. Strict standards have recently been enforced by state government to regulate the industry, which has been in Australia for 7 years. With the tough economic times making many people tighten the money belt, manufactured homes are becoming a viable choice.
You can have a home exactly the same as a traditionally built home that costs about 65% of the same thing.
The trend is for these homes to be set up in villages, these representing an entire lifestyle with sporting and entertainment facilities included. The expo continues tomorrow.
An early high tide saw competitors in the trials struggle to find rideable waves, but by the time the main event started, conditions had improved markedly. The upsets came early when experienced professional Marcus Brabant and rising star Bo Emerton were eliminated in Heat 1. In Heat 2, Merryweather's Dave MacArthur made the most of a last-minute call-up from the reserves list. Local knowledge a key factor.
Especially with a point there, you know, you've got to know where the wave breaks, and I reckon that local knowledge helps a lot anyway.
His good form continued later in the day when he followed American Adam Raplogle into the third round. Kingscliff's Shane Bevan was also in awesome small wave form, and along with Newcastle's Justin Lee, he eliminated Hawaiian legend Johnny Boy Gomes. Merryweather's World Junior Champ Chad Edser survived a close heat to progress, along with Byron Bay power surfer Brendan Margison.
It's terrible. It's only 1 to 2 foot, and there's not many waves. You got to work into the shore, to get the length.
While there have been plenty of upsets in the water, the biggest shock has come from here on dry land, where it's been revealed Newcastle superstar Nick Wood is in danger of missing his home event.
Nick, unfortunately, for whatever reason, hadn't submitted an entry, so when we did the final check-in and the draw for the event, Nick's name was not included.
The Wood camp claims the entry was lodged, but admits to a mix-up in payments. He now has the option of paying the fee and hoping for a start as an alternate if one of the seeded surfers fails to appear. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
The Newcastle rail line has divided the city for more than 130 years. In recent years, a proposal to cut it at Civic Station has been the source of conflict between residents, local council aldermen and the state government.
State government approved the severing of the line at Civic in 1990, but since then no work has been done to enforce that decision. Instead, the last few years has featured a bitter war of words between Newcastle City Council aldermen and the business community, who all support the cutting of the line, and the local residents who don't.
But now it seems state government is ready to make a move.
It will stop at Civic, and we're working on the transport strategy in terms of how best to handle the ongoing traffic through buses and which way they should move and where should be the bus rail interchange, etc.
This transport study is currently being carried out by private consultants. A final report is expected by November. Mr Baird says should buses be seen as the most viable means of carrying commuters from Civic into Newcastle, their introduction costs would be covered.
Yes, we would be funding a bus rail interchange, and yes, we would be supplying the buses. So whichever way it goes, I'm sure we'll be paying the bill.
Mr Baird also announced during a meeting with the Newcastle Chamber of Commerce today that legislation to make the Port of Newcastle autonomous has received the Premier's approval and is due to go before Parliament within the next 6 months. As a result, Chamber President Colin Chapman is confident the port will be free of Sydney-based control by next year. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Day 2 and another 36 kilometres behind them, weary miners quenched their thirst and rested their blistered feet at a Wyong Sports Oval.
I've got one blister and one nail coming off, but that's compared to the other guys, it's pretty good.
These former employees of New Vale Colliery say they're walking for work. They want Premier Fay and Pacific Power to allow them to lease the now disused colliery. As part of their campaign to keep the mine open, workers staged an underground sit-in last year. Gary Hunter was one of those men. He says this protest march to Sydney is a lot easier.
Or after 8 days underground, this is a piece of cake. No problem at all. Yeah, we'll do it.
The miners will spend the night camped on this oval. Tomorrow they'll continue their march to Sydney. The miners plan to hold a demonstration outside Parliament House on Tuesday. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Joe Shipp came bearing gifts. He first handed over $40,000 to the Hunter Academy of Sport. The money is a long-awaited seed grant to really establish the academy and continue the development of talented school-age sports people. The International Hockey Complex was the next to benefit. Mr Shipp cleared the red tape for $25,000 to be spent building an enclosed viewing platform. The area will be constructed on a rise, providing an uninterrupted all-weather view of both fields. The money was originally set aside for a toilet block.
I think it's important that we recognise the local priorities rather than dictating from downtown Sydney.
But that's where the handout stopped. While opening the new office for the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation, the Sports Minister said he wouldn't be offering the association any more cash for a while.
You have to share it around a bit. It's not possible, as much as you'd like to, be going around the state, waltzing around the state, handing out cheques here and there, everywhere else. We will do our bit and meet the request as they come in to see what we can do.
The government has already given $125,000 for the development of Birmingham Gardens. The Sports Minister believes the association is now in a position to become fully self-supporting.
It's been a long wait for oyster farmers hit by January's heatwave that stretched from the far north coast to Batemans Bay in the south. Millions of dollars dried up in the disaster. Port Stephens growers recorded a 30% loss. In Foster, a crippling 80% of oysters were wiped out. On a visit to Port Stephens last month, Minister for Natural Resources Ian Causley promised to find farmers financial aid through the Rural Assistance Authority. But the authority won't pay out, claiming oysters killed by heat don't come under the disaster scheme. The Minister is awaiting a report from the Department of Fisheries, believed to recommend around $6 million be made available. The report will go before Premier John Fahey, who'll then take the matter to Treasury. A spokesperson from Mr Causley's office said the lengthy delay in assistance for oyster farmers was regrettable. However, the Minister had made a commitment to personally take the matter to Premier John Fahey within the next few weeks. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
I'm going on a trip soon. I thought I'd get it checked before going.
The winning formula for powerlifting is good back strength and plenty of grunt. Competitors must lift the bar and drop to a squat with their backside stopping lower than their knees. The weight must then be lifted back onto the stands. Tamworth's Ian Harrison set a new national record with this 275 kilo lift. Sydney's Michael Pianco broke both the junior and masters records with a lift of 310 kilos, but failed in his attempt to add an extra 10. And at Gosford, muscles of a different size and shape in the Central Coast Bodybuilding Championships. The dust at times was almost choking. Because it was so light, it stayed in the air longer, making visibility tough for following cars. The tracks around Foster were mainly tight and winding, giving drivers plenty of opportunity to slide. The straights were flat out. Cars often got up to speeds close to 200 kilometres an hour. This class of rally isn't just the domain of the big budget operators. Families on a shoestring can enter. Crowds over the weekend have been impressive. Hundreds of people have gone bush, trying to see the best action away from the standard course. Winners in today's different classes move on to the next state round later in the month. Cessnock ran onto the sports ground determined to put the sorrow of club stalwart Mark Watson's death behind them. Steve Fulmer has the Goannas running with confidence and has built up an impressive line of forwards in the lower ranks, allowing first grade plenty of depth. The Cessnock club also tried to boost crowds by providing a top local band for halftime entertainment. However, Central didn't listen to the band and won 28-8. At Townsend Oval and South Newcastle were at home to Waratah Mayfield. The Cheetahs are tipped to become the comp's quiet achievers, but today all the early play went the Lions' way. South finished up winners 28-6. The 3 days of gruelling competition showed it was taking its toll with some riders and their mounts. For each rail that fell, 5 points was taken from their score, and that could mean the difference between winning and losing. One of today's more interesting competitors was French Count Patrick Devine. This is one of his last events before heading back to Europe. Singleton's Prue Crib also went round in a faultless performance and didn't drop a point. The top performers from Lochinvar are fast becoming firm favourites for the championships at Sydney's Royal Easter Show.
Located northwest of Port Augusta, Narungga is a ground station used for controlling satellites in the United States Defence Support Program. Its technology provides early warning of attacks on the US or its allies. The base, built on Aboriginal tribal land, is a sensitive issue with peace activists believing the site to be a possible nuclear target.
Well, I'm hoping a lot more people will be aware of what that land's being used for, and of the injustice that's being done to the Kukatha people of that area.
Later this week, hundreds of activists will meet at Narungga, some travelling thousands of kilometres to camp out over the Easter weekend. They're hoping the federal government will one day support their message of world peace.
We're going all that way, and we'll keep going all that way as long as it's necessary to show the Australian government that we mean it, that Australia must not be used this way, and that we must get a proper relationship with the United States where we're not sucking up to them, actually allowing our land to be used to help them sell weapons.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
2 years ago, tests by the Public Health Unit revealed that a number of children living near the Pasminco lead smelter at Bullaroo had elevated levels of lead in their blood. Those houses closest to the smelter also showed a high content of lead in the soil. But until now, the extent of the contamination has been unknown. Within the next few days, the Environment Protection Authority will begin testing 500 houses to identify the areas most at risk.
We're focusing on the areas that have been identified as priority areas by the Public Health Unit study, and then we're attempting to define more accurately the limits of those areas of relatively higher contamination.
In the South Australian town of Port Pirie, the home of the largest lead smelter in the world, a clean-up program has been underway for more than 10 years. Once the EPA has an idea of where the trouble areas are in Lake Macquarie, it too can begin preparing a plan to manage the problem.
Some of the areas we may well conclude don't require major clean-up. Then we need to look at the options for remediation work or clean-up or decontamination work or just risk reduction.
The test could also have implications for people wanting to sell their properties. Most houses in the area carry a lead warning on the 149 certificate.
We ought to be able to reduce the total area to which the 149 certificate notation has to apply.
Ambulance officer Phil Proust edged past 11,000-volt live wires brought down when a Jaguar left Waihee Road at high speed about 7 last night. It was more than an hour before power could be cut. The seriously injured driver, suffering head and back injuries, was thrown clear of the vehicle but still lay dangerously close to live wires.
Phil has crawled in underneath the back of the car, in under the wires, retrieved the person from that dangerous situation back out to a safe area, treated him prior to having the paramedics come down on the rescue helicopter. The person's been retrieved back to John Hunter Hospital with spinal and head injuries, but it's reported in a serious condition, but nevertheless alive due to Phil's brave action.
The St John Passion is a passion play telling the story of Christ's last days on earth, with much musical embellishment from the pen of Johann Sebastian Bach. As usual, the University Choir and Orchestra is conducted by Peter Brock, who has presented previous Easter performances of the Messiah and the Matthew Passion, among others. In this performance, the pivotal role of the evangelist will be taken by Queensland tenor Gregory Massingham. Keith Hempton is the bass, with one of Newcastle's best-known sopranos, Susan Hawkins-Hart, and mezzo Anne Fish. The one performance is on Good Friday night in the Great Hall at the University.
It needs only a hiccup to snarl holiday traffic on the John Renshaw Drive. This accident this afternoon produced an instant bank-up of northbound vehicles. Fortunately, the occupants of a utility that collided with the trailer and was then hit by a station wagon escaped with only minor injuries. But in its environmental impact statement, the RTA is predicting an increase in accidents in the area when completion of the F3 freeway lifts traffic volume on nearby Lennigans Drive by 50%. How the 6-lane F3 could be so close to completion, and options for where it goes now are only just being aired, defies explanation. And the only option with a definite completion date is December this year for the installation of traffic lights at the intersection with the New England Highway, where tonight police are trying to control traffic. The RTA admits there will still be traffic frustration and accidents until Stage 2 is complete. This will provide a second 2-lane carriageway parallel to Lennigans Drive and a flyover at the intersection with the New England Highway. Work to be started as soon as practicable after a decision is made on the environmental impact statement, which is now up for comment until May the 21st. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
This Easter's police road safety campaign, codenamed Operation Torres, urges motorists to take it slow and steady.
Historically, it is the worst time of the year to be on the road.
Many drivers have taken the hint, breaking their trips at a number of driver reviver stops set up between Sydney and the border. 400 warm drinks and snacks were served in the first 2 hours of operations at the Freeman's Waterhole reviver stop.
A lady said to me, "What's this all about?" And I said, "Well, it's all donated, it's free, and maybe I might just save a life." And she said, "Yes, it could be mine."
Police have stepped up checks on drink driving, speeding, seatbelts and child restraints. They warn holidaymakers taking advantage of the 4-day break not to overextend themselves by rushing to and from distant destinations. Fatigue remains the number one killer. Just before sunrise, a car travelling north veered across the Pacific Highway near Kew and collided with a semi-trailer.
There was light rain at the time, and apart from that we were unable to determine what the cause was at this stage.
The 48-year-old male driver from the south coast and his 45-year-old wife were killed instantly. Their teenage son and daughter in the back were seriously injured and taken to hospital in Port Macquarie. The 18-year-old man is suffering chest and abdominal injuries, his 12-year-old sister serious head and abdominal injuries. The transport driver escaped with shock. It took rescuers more than an hour to remove the dead and injured from the wreck. One lane of the Pacific Highway was closed. Elsewhere, police report a 45% increase in drink driving charges. At Corindi in the northwest, 2 men sharing the drive were booked with mid-range and high-range blood alcohol levels. The men had 3 young children in the car with them and were found drinking when pulled up a second time. On the Central Coast, a P-plater was clocked at 130 kilometres an hour in an 80 zone on wet roads. The driver had held a provisional licence for just 4 days. Driver reviver stops will continue to operate tonight from the Central Coast to the border. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
"45-year-old Stanley Francis Maguire from San Remo was taken by a prison van to Wyong local court this morning, charged over the murder of John Vickers from Mannering Park last month. The body of 45-year-old Vickers was found in the car park of the Dawson RSL. He had suffered multiple head injuries and had also been shot in the back of the head. He died several hours later in hospital. The case was adjourned for another mention on May 12th in Wyong local court. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Late yesterday, Great Lakes Shire Council approved the development application for an industrial subdivision at Grey Gum Road. Approval was on the condition of a 30-metre buffer zone of bushland along the estate be doubled to 60 metres.
The extra buffer will provide, as far as I'm concerned, some safeguards to the residential area and to the movement of koalas through that area.
Well, I think it's a shameful decision. I think that they ought to be ashamed of themselves because they're not taking into account the wishes of the people here. They're not speaking on behalf of the majority of the people in the Shire.
The Residents' Grey Gum Action Group believes a corridor of at least 100 metres was needed. Residents do not want an industrial estate in their backyards. They believe the development will have a negative impact on noise and odour. But the group says its chief concern is that koalas which travel through the area will be lost.
I mean, if you destroy their habitat, then you destroy the koalas. They've got nowhere to go.
The Action Group is not giving up its fight and will be calling for an environmental impact statement for the whole area.
A lunch in Taree today was like the Last Supper for the Taree Neighbourhood Centre. Representatives from various groups gathered to farewell the building that they've used over many years.
Well, there are a lot of support groups that have met here in the Taree Neighbourhood Centre, all sorts of things from Alcoholics Anonymous, even groups like writers groups, so that they're not all welfare in that sense.
The Neighbourhood Centre building has been the subject of controversy over the past 18 months, with proposals for the historic building to be bulldozed. However, the sale of the building by Taree Council in February has ensured that it will be restored. But community groups, which gathered for a final meeting today, are now looking for other accommodation. This means the loss of a neighbourhood centre as such for the area for the time being.
After today or after this week, there will no longer be that central place, so that people that come to Taree looking for services or information, there'll be no central place where they can go to get that.
The public hearing is being held at Parliament House in Sydney. The 6-member select committee has been assigned to investigate the New Vale miners' bid to lease their now idle colliery. And today was a busy day, with no less than a dozen people scheduled to give evidence. Among the list, Ron McCulloch, the New Vale miners' consultant, Professor Winscombe from Newcastle University, and 6 New Vale miners, including Bob Armstrong and Phil Dunn. Also giving evidence, representatives from Pacific Power, the United Mine Workers Federation, and Mark Rich and Company, the group who've offered to export the coal produced at New Vale. Tomorrow, the committee will assess all evidence given. If it considers more evidence is needed, further witnesses will be called. However, the committee hopes to have a draft report compiled early next week, with the final report ready for presentation to Parliament later the same week. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It was a beautiful day on Lake Macquarie for everyone but the sailors. The wind dribbling in from the northwest at about 5 knots.
Very slow.
Frustrating?
Just it.
150 boats in 4 categories struggled around the triangle course for Heat 1. In the different class heats, local sailors dominated. Luke Hughes from Belmont High Division 1, Trent Towndrove from Warners Bay Division 2, Ben Vaughan from Belmont Divi 3. The only visiting winner, Jason McGlashan from Port Macquarie, took the sailboard. But this is only the first day of competition. The state titles continue tomorrow.
The clinics are part of an initiative to bring expert soccer coaches to northern New South Wales. 34 budding Socceroos practice their ball skills in Glen Innes under the guiding hand of Lismore's Renato Ciela. Both boys and girls have taken part in the school holidays clinics, and in Renato's opinion, all the youngsters have a bright future in the game.
The standard of soccer around this area is very good. I'm very impressed with what I've seen thus far. And I think the future for soccer in this area looks very promising.
When you weigh in at 119 kilos, stretching up to 210 centimetres tall, there must be a fair bit of pressure on your joints. Paul Kuiper had 9 months rest after a knee reconstruction, but a rapid run back into the game has left him with a touch of tendinitis.
A lot of wear and tear at the Kmart Classic. We had 3 games in a row. We had a hard week of training beforehand, so I guess all of that compiled into making it a bit sore.
Kuiper is out for the game against New Boys Townsville Suns. It's the opening round of the NBL season and Townsville will be out to impress.
We know that they're going to play very emotional. It's been a long, hard road for them to get to the NBL, and they're going to come out in their first game with a lot of emotion, very fired up.
The Falcons will be fired up as well. They'll miss Kuiper's input, but the team clown has given them, well, most of his support.
I hope they go great, but not too great.